and we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jessica Crotty today. She's the general manager of C. Crane with over 20 years of experience in e-commerce systems, shipping, and software integration. Jessica has helped C. Crane establish a highly successful e-commerce and Amazon store and regularly evaluates the new platforms. And she understands how important it is to be able to expand your customer base beyond local economy and leverage technology to improve profitability and efficiency. Jessica was born and raised in California and resides in Humboldt County for over 40 years. And then as part of that, I also just wanted to say really quick that the North Coast SBDC digital marketing program will be launched next month. And we put it in the beginning of the chat and I'll drop it in there again. But if you're interested in e-commerce and digital marketing, Layla asked us to please make an announcement. So that way you guys are hearing about that. So please, we'll go ahead and let Jessica start with her presentation and then we'll do live chat when she's done. And please take a minute to fill out the poll when you have an opportunity. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat. No need to put them in the Q&A. Thank you so much. And Jessica, it's all you.
Awesome. Thank you guys for coming. I'm going to share my screen and see if I can make this work the way I practiced. And there we go. And I'll minimize that. It's different when you have two screens, so I apologize a little bit in advance if I have to go back and forth here. Make sure I get things where I want to be. All right. There we go. Can you guys all see my screen? You can just type in the chat yes. I want to make sure. Perfect. Okay. So as Dianna mentioned, I am with C. Crane. I'm actually just recently, we announced I couldn't do it before when we were doing this, but I'm actually transitioned into the CEO role for the company. I've been with the company for over 25 years. And so I'll tell you a little bit about C. Crane. This is our we call it new facility. We've actually been here 5 years now, but we used to be in the Brown House where a lot of people knew where we were. Now we're right as you come into Main Street, off of Main Street in Fortuna. And this is the old bowling alley for those of you that are familiar with Fortuna. So this is where all of our staff is headquartered, and we have sales, customer service, tech support. We have our warehouse, we ship product, we do QC and engineering here. We do have some remote positions, so we do have QC overseas for our manufacturers, and we also have a couple outside sales reps that work for distribution of our product business to business. Bob Crane is the founder of C. Crane, he and his wife, Sue. And these are a couple pictures of when they got started. And so Bob was doing it out of his house in his shop. And they were actually answering phones out of their home when they started. Bob was a woodworker in the Bay Area in the 70s and 80s. And he and Sue and their two daughters defected to Fortuna in 1982 when traffic in the Bay became too much. And it sounds like a lot of people moved here at that time. That's actually when my family moved from Southern California as well. And they left behind a thriving business and the opportunity of being booked with work for years. They made the transition from the big city to small town living, except for one thing. They were avid radio lovers and big KGO fans. I imagine some of you are familiar with KGO. It's a big station out of San Francisco. And they couldn't get that signal because they're behind the Redwood curtain. And that was just too small town for them. And in 1983, he found an antenna that helped him pull the signal and thought there might be more people with the same issue. He started selling the antenna out of his home, and the rest, as they say, is history. So today we sell radios all over the world. He's continued his building ways and is the inspiration for many of the products that we design and manufacture. Most recently, like I mentioned, I've transitioned into the role of CEO. Bob's stepping back some, and he doesn't like the word retired because he's not ever going to retire, but he wants to only be here part-time and only help with development of the products. So that's pretty much what he's doing. I have always been pretty much from the beginning involved at some level with our systems and e-commerce. And my experience with the e-commerce, you get some of my background, is in 1996, I started here at the company, and it was kind of the beginning of the internet, and our website had fillable order forms. And so we received emails regularly about how much it sucked. The thing about it, though, is we were still getting sales. So that was one of my first big projects with C Crane, and I had zero background because back then there was no e-commerce experience. There was no e-commerce. It was all brand new. And so I worked with Bob and a third party locally to create an actual e-commerce site. And there was no integration because back then there wasn't such a thing. Everything was manual. It was super um, labor intensive because of that kind of work. And there was also, it was really hard to share the workload because there was no way to tell, like, when somebody was working on a page, you could easily overwrite what each other were doing. So had to develop some internal systems and controls to prevent overwriting people's work. So we fast forward a little bit, and we had grown very quickly, and the demands for our site were causing issues on the shared platform. We would actually try to notify the platform provider ahead of time, and they would actually turn our site off before one of our ads would run, and because it would cause the other sites to fail as well. So we ended up having to go to a dedicated e-commerce site. And back then, there was no such thing as managed services. There weren't the things that there are now. Scalability wasn't a thing. Clusters weren't a thing. There wasn't a way to nicely and easily have a dedicated e-commerce site without building it yourself. So we rented space from a co-location facility out of the area because doing it here was cost prohibitive, and we didn't even have the pipe to be able to do it. So you couldn't have the bandwidth to even have a site that was getting the kind of traffic that we were getting at the time. So I got kind of a sink or swim education in all things related to e-commerce, from database programming. Windows NT was what was on back then, security structures, all of it, and was able to figure it out and buy time with different people to get us going. And then in 2003, we upgraded to a new software platform for our in-house operations, which is our ERP system. So that was something that handled all of everything. So customer service, order entry, returns, um, shipping, all the different parts, accounting, portions of accounting. And the we had a site then that would integrate directly with that system. And so various iterations, we were on that platform for 17 years. And we just last year, of all the years, we chose 2020 to upgrade our ERP system. And now we are on a new ERP for our back end that's cloud based, and our current system for e-commerce is now on BigCommerce, and all of those integrate directly. So that's my background for the company with e-commerce. Um, so let's talk about web and e-commerce. So web presence doesn't have to be e-commerce, although I'm going to do my best to make a case for it. And it doesn't have to be an expensive custom design website. It can be a 1, 2, or 3 page site hosted on so many platforms. So we'll discuss later on how to decide on a host and some base level considerations. There are many different marketplaces that can act as a web and or e-commerce platform for you. So like think of Amazon, eBay, Etsy, Walmart, etc. E-commerce doesn't have to be an all or nothing proposition, meaning that you don't have to do all of it right from the start. A gal I follow on business building, her name's Amy Porterfield. She says this: guess who doesn't connect with their audience, build an engaged following, and sell the right product to the right people while making a massive impact? Those who are doing nothing out of fear of doing the wrong thing. And I just can't tell you how true that is, um, because fear, I think, is a lot of times what holds people back from doing anything in the web or the e-commerce space. They're so afraid that they're going to pick the wrong platform or do the wrong thing that they do nothing, which is worse than doing the wrong thing. I can guarantee it. Um, if you haven't filled out the poll, make sure you hop over to the polls, because at the end I'd like to chat about kind of where you're at and maybe make this case a little stronger for you for why to have a web presence. Um, Personally, I think one of the best reasons is that you get to create your desired first impression. What do you want people to see when they search your company or product? It's kind of like the digital front desk of your business. It's your receptionist before they come in to contact you. What are you presenting? What's your brand that you're releasing to the public? It also gives you a means by which to capture and explore data. So there are so much analytics available through Google, and you can do as little or as much as you like. You don't have to, again, get overwhelmed with it, but it will tell you where they're coming from, how they got there. Um, you can take it levels further on, how like their geographic location, what time of day. I mean, there's so much information that you can track if you set it up. It's also a way to increase your exposure, whether organically or through paid advertising. So whether you're a restaurant or a company selling a physical product or a digital product, your web presence is an extension of your brand and a potential way to interact with existing and or future customers. So why e-commerce? Well, it's an opportunity to reach more than your local community. Uh, Insulation, somewhat, from being dependent on the local economy. So if a mainstay industry takes a big hit, you have other sources of income outside. You're not completely reliant on the local economy for your business. Sales while you sleep. I mean, what's better than that, right? Open 24/7, but you don't actually physically have to have somebody manning your store. That is a huge case, you guys, for that. Um, I also say COVID pretty much spotlighted why everyone should have e-commerce, even from the standpoint of local community, only by being able to pivot and provide access. If for no other reason, I mean, you think about the restaurants, the DoorDash, Instacart, things that you wouldn't traditionally think of e-commerce, curbside pickup, right? Like just because you have a little retail store doesn't mean that you shouldn't invest at a level, even a low level, for e-commerce, so that if something does happen that you couldn't possibly intimidate and anticipate, like a pandemic, you're in a position to pivot and take advantage of that with minimal effort. Also, the ability to stay in contact with your customers and develop a relationship and find ways to add additional value. And e-commerce typically provides you some ways to do that, whether that's through list building with email marketing, whether that's text messaging, whether that's an actual physical mailing list where you can mail postcards, some way to stay in contact with your customers, whether that they follow you on Facebook. And then also reduced risk. So if you're just getting started, maybe you have no web presence at all. Maybe you're just getting started, or your job is to convince people to get started. Um, yes, I will provide the slide deck. I didn't think about it, but I definitely can for you. Um, Reduced risk if done exclusively from a low startup overhead. So versus like if you were just starting a business like we did 30 years ago, like 35 years ago, there's a lot that went into starting a business then comparatively, because of the overhead. You have to find some place to rent, then you have to find somebody to, like I said, you have to co-locate and get a server and all the different things. Like for $50, you can go get a website set up. You can go buy, $100 worth of inventory, pay your business license fee and do the couple legal things that you have to do, and you can have a business up and running. I think from that standpoint, your overhead is so much lower. And then of course, done in conjunction with a retail business that you already have, I mean, you're just like, you just leveled up at a whole nother level. And then always back to number four, after experiencing what we've done through COVID, I think that I just can't make a more compelling case for having your own e-commerce than what I saw during COVID for different business owners, and then even people that sell on different platforms, which I'll talk about here in a second. So I want to show you guys some different platforms, and I just kind of want to run through a couple. So Square, there's Squarespace, and Square is Square Up. There's Wix, there's Shopify, BigCommerce, WordPress. All of these are e-commerce platforms. Even WordPress, which typically you think of for like blog, also has added some e-commerce components. And then there's Amazon and Walmart, Etsy, eBay, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok. So kind of a mixed bag of platforms where you can sell that already have the infrastructure in place for you. But Facebook has also added a store option. Instagram is integrated directly with Facebook. Pinterest has link to store options. TikTok, I'm not as familiar with, so I'm not sure how much integration they have from a commerce perspective, but I can tell you if they don't have it now, it's coming. I didn't put YouTube on there, but YouTube is also a platform that people do use exclusively for a way to drive business to their e-commerce. So I want to stop my slide for a moment and I'll show you some of these sites. So can everybody see my new screen? I think you can because I think I see what you see, but I just want to make sure. Yay. Okay. So this is SquareUp. And the reason I started with SquareUp is because I know a lot of people use Square for their credit card processing, especially small business. So if you use Square already, you have very little to do to switch to like start e-commerce. They include it with what you already have. And so if you go into your resources, you can look at your pricing, it will show you all the different like ways that the pricing works and then upgrades of different kinds. They do custom pricing too. You can do commerce, an online store, launch for free, and they really do have some aspects that are free. The cool thing about Square Up is that it's already integrated with what you're using. So if you start capturing or prompting for customer information when they're sliding their card, and some people do, some people don't, but you're like, would you like to opt into our email marketing? You can do that right at the cash register level. And then people can get their receipt emailed to them and you can opt in at that point. There's a lot of different ways that they already have built. They're also, we've used them for when we travel to events and we sell at shows. Uh, it's great because we were able to just add the inventory that we took to the show, or we're able to actually now they just built an integration with our new ERP system. Sorry about that. I forgot to close my, oh, no, cancel. Forgot to close all my emails. That was one of my checklist. But they will integrate now with our new system. So you can then build integrations direct with them for your inventory and you can decide which products. They're really easy. They're very responsive. I definitely, if you're using them, I would say that's a great starting place if you don't already have e-commerce built. Even if you do have e-commerce built, I would make the case for you to check it out. It might be easier than what you're currently doing. Um, Another one is Squarespace. And I wanted to do both of these because people get confused thinking they're related and they're not. So Squarespace is just another platform. They're very easy to use. They have a ton of templates. Their integrations aren't as robust, but they are like if you're brand new, they are like about as easy as it gets because if you click the get started, they literally are going to walk you through, like asking you the questions and help you figure out what you need. So Wix is another one. I listed kind of the pricing so you can kind of see what you're looking at um, and how it works. So you, like I said, for under 50 bucks, you can get started with website plans. If you want to go into e-commerce, you still $23 a month. You can get started depending on what kind of volume of transactions you're going to have. If you're just getting started out and you don't know, definitely these folks have account managers that will help walk you through it. It's not something you have to do by yourself. They want your business. So make the appointment, do the free demo, get the info. Shopify is more robust. So if you're like at a higher level, you already know you're doing a bigger volume in transactions. This is where you can start to get, there's more apps, there's more add-ons. They have more templates. They have more custom templates. There's customizations available. It also, of course, gets more pricey. They do charge for kind of everything, but it is a more robust platform. Like I said, we're on BigCommerce, so you can see the different pricing in there. There's enterprise or there's essentials, depending on what you're doing. You can again request a demo. They've been great to work with. The reason we chose them over Shopify was that they're literally in their developers are in the same building as our ERP system over in Austin, Texas. And so we felt like their integration long term might be more beneficial for us. But Shopify was like right on the list for us. Again, WordPress. So that's a blog, what people mostly think of blog, but people are selling, especially like digital products. It's a great way to do different things. And it's a good starting place. Plans and pricing is, again, really reasonable. You can start really, really, really small. Um, and then go from there. And they tell you all the things. And there, again, is just unlimited resources when it comes to learning about any of these platforms. Type it out on YouTube and there is a video for it. I guarantee it. And if there's not, let me know because somebody wants to build it. Then we'll switch to platforms. So those are all the different e-commerce providers. I wanted to show you the platform. So like Amazon, you can become a seller on Amazon. So you just go in and sign up. It's $40 a month plus the fees. Um, what that looks like is if you go here, so you can see like here's a couple of our listings on Amazon. Now, Amazon has two different ways that you can sell through them without selling direct to them. So there's FBM, which is fulfilled by merchant, and then there's FBA, which is fulfilled by Amazon. So I'm going to show you two different listings for us because we do both. We do a hybrid version. Actually, almost every product that we list that's FBA, fulfilled by Amazon, we also sell FBM because if they run out of inventory, then we can continue to get sales. So here's one that's FBA, or excuse me, FBM. And you can see it ships from C. Crane and is sold by C. Crane. And so that's how you know it's an FBM versus Amazon, where it ships from Amazon and it's sold by C. Crane. And the other like kind of indicator a lot of times if it's sold by a merchant is Prime is available for delivery. FBM typically doesn't have Prime. Sometimes it does, but to qualify for selling Prime as an FBM, you have to be able to deliver in really tight time frames and process orders. So we choose not to do that function. Then there's Walmart, which also is a platform that we sell on. Currently, they just started offering fulfilled by Walmart also to compete with Amazon's FBA. We have it on our list to get started. We have not invested as heavily in Walmart because it's not as effective for us so far. Their platform isn't as robust, and their backend is a little I don't know if hanky is the right word, but it's definitely not as sophisticated as Amazon's from a seller standpoint and from all the tools. Another platform we don't sell on because it's not our audience, but Etsy. So if you're doing handmade products or if you're doing art, if you're doing customized products, Etsy is the platform to be on. I purchase a tremendous amount of gifts on Etsy because I do like the customization. One thing you kind of have to pay attention to are those reviews because a lot of times those are indicative of how committed the seller is. Some people are on here just occasionally and maybe they're not as responsive, but it is a very popular platform and it's very good for handmade or customized gifts. But I even buy those wax melts for like the scented oil things. And I found a really great reseller on here that I couldn't find anywhere else, and they're amazing. So, others, Facebook, I wanted to show you guys kind of how that comes up. So, if you have like on Google and you go and search, oh, best sushi near me, you can see Kome comes up. Google has a lot of different parts to their algorithm as to how they decide who shows up first. But having your own website makes a big difference. Um, May has their own website. They also have a Facebook page, so they're showing up a lot. Even though, like, even when I go to Arcata, if I do the same search, I will get still Kome will show up. So keep in mind that how important it is just to even do something small. Um, you can also just do Facebook, so you can see that you can have just a post. You could just have that web presence. It's better again than none. Doing something is better than none. Um, it gives you a way for customers to contact you. The one thing I will caution you about is if you choose to do any of these, you have to respond. You cannot just allow your messages to go unread because people have, as soon as you do this, people can rate you, not just for your product. They can rate you for your service. And that's super important when you're keeping this in mind. If you're not going to manage it on some level, at least checking in on a set frequency, it's going to cost you and hurt you more than it helps you if your service isn't excellent. And part of that excellent service means checking your messages. It's not hard, just it's a new way of doing things for a lot of people. So then there's Instagram, and Instagram is linked to Facebook, and so it's important to kind of know. But again, depends where your audience is. And so it's important that you know kind of where you're going to find your audience. If you're not sure, it doesn't hurt to test. It's not a big effort to create an account for your business and then try it out a little bit and see if you get some engagement. But Chewy.com, they have a lot of engagement because pets are adorable and everybody likes to take pictures of their pets and engage. So it's a really good spot for them. And then there's Pinterest, which again lends itself towards furniture or physical product that is visually appealing. Food, I know there's a lot of food in here, but I love how they've taken it. When it first started, it was just people doing boards, but now I can go in here and if I like those wall lights, they're going to show me products and I can then purchase products. And now you can pay for different advertising, of course, to get your placement, but you can also, if it's your post, you can link to your own site. So there's a lot that can be done in Pinterest if you're in a furniture space or you're in um, something that's visually appealing like food. And then I wanted to show you, like, if you search on our site, see Crane, this is part of what happens when you are doing the SEO and your site feeds the data. So how it's formatted. So it's something to pay attention to. Um, it's something that we're actually working with an outside party now with that's an expert in BigCommerce to improve some of our SEO and help us pay attention to. So even though we do all of this stuff, it's always nice to get outside input on, hey, yeah, you have opportunities in these spaces. So once you get to certain places, it's really useful. Another thing is, again, your content. The more quality content you have, the higher your ranking is on Google. So if you have value that you can add to your customers about like how-tos or what's important, that's great information and you should spend time on that and put it on your website. If you do nothing else, if you decide none of this is for me, I can't do it, I just don't have the resources, um, do your Google Merchant Center. Do nothing else. Do your Google Merchant Center. Go in, put on what your address is, when you're open, what your phone number is, how to contact you. Put a photo of your place if you have a physical location or your product and what your website is if you don't. But if you do nothing else, do this because it is worthwhile. And Dianna put a link down in the chat so that you can see. And then here is again is our blog. I just wanted to show you guys what we do on our blog. When we, on our various iterations of e-commerce, several of them didn't offer static pages. Once you're in e-commerce, so that's a consideration that we'll touch on later is where this matters. And so if you need static content, um, make sure that the e-commerce provider that you're going to choose allows for static content if you go to e-commerce. If not, you might end up with a separate blog site like we do, and then you're going to end up paying somebody to decide, do we keep it this way or do we maintain them separately? And then you're driving traffic to different places, and it just gets a little convoluted and sometimes doesn't give you as much benefit as if it were all under the one domain. And then here's our website on BigCommerce, so ccrane.com. So you can see we have a pretty robust site. You can request a free catalog. We do use a lot of apps through BigCommerce for like the shipping rates and for the checkout and for the different ways that the site's designed, even for the reviews, subscribing to our email list. We use a third party called ListTrack. So there's a lot of different third parties that we use, but overall, BigCommerce has been just amazing to work with. Um, so let me go back to my display here. And I just want to talk really quick about the pros and cons of a platform and why one over the other. So the pros of your own site versus a platform is you own the content. Uh, you own the customers. You get to set the rules. Fees are typically lower, and you have more freedom and control. And by owning the content, what I mean is like you've created it, it's yours. If you want to move it to another site, no issues, right? The customers, you have their data in your own data set. And that's important from the standpoint of the cons. When you're on a platform, they own the content and it's often shared. So you'll see, like on Amazon, I'm sure you've seen it where you'll have multiple listings and you'll see several sellers selling the same products, even on our own listing. So our own brand, even though we tell people like you can't resell, we have to go try to track down who's reselling our product that's not authorized. It could be just an individual. But what they can do is then they can change the content or they can add a picture that maybe isn't reflective of what you want your brand to be. And then you get to battle the platform owner to try to make it so that they either can't do it or that it gets removed because it's creating confusion and it just is some extra work. They also own the customers. So if you're selling on Amazon or Walmart, they tell you how, when, why you can contact the customers or not. So Amazon's gotten to the spot where like you have to pick the reason you're contacting them, and then they have a template that's kind of pre-filled out because they don't want you to interact too much with that customer because they consider it their customer. Um, they also set all the rules, and their rules are ever changing. So whether that's how quickly you have to respond, whether that's how quickly you have to process the order, um, what kind of shipping you have to offer or shipping rates that you can offer, there's a lot of rules, and so they're always changing. Typically, the fees are higher um, because you're using their platform and you're getting the benefit of their marketing. Less freedom and control. And then the big one that I really want you to pay attention to is that they can close your store and there's very little recourse for you. So I've read horror stories off of Etsy. I've experienced it ourselves on Amazon where our account got suspended for like a fraud situation on their side of things. And we had a lot of lost revenue because of it. And it took a lot of work to get it back in place. Had that been our only source of income, we would have been in a really bad situation. So when you're looking at building, that's why I say your own e-commerce site is so important in tandem with anything else that you're doing, because then your eggs aren't all in one basket. And then the pros of a platform versus your own site, and why I make the case that you should do both, is that they have deep marketing pockets. I mean, you've watched Amazon has marketing everywhere on every platform, on every TV, digital speaker, you name it. They've got advertising. Same with Google. So you're getting the advantage. They also have designers and compatibility experts, and the fish are swimming there already. So it's pretty easy pickings as far as the amount of effort that's required for you to get a sale. There's also a lot of support, and you don't have to have any experience. So it's templated. There's not like it tells you how many characters it can be, it's how bold, what's not. They decide all of the formatting. Um, so you don't have to have the same experience maybe as developing your own site. Although, like I said, it's gotten so much easier. Um, And then the investment of your time is relatively low. Outside of that, keeping up with the rules and the customer service aspect, you're not, once you get it set up initially, there's not a lot of maintenance for you to do. Besides, if there's something that changes or you need to add a new product or change your shipping or something like that. If you decide to go with the FBA model or filled by the vendor, they can ship for you. So the only thing you have to figure out is how to get your product to them, and they have really good documentation on that. And then you don't have to sell directly to them to sell on their site, which is huge. When I first started in e-commerce, you had to sell direct to Amazon, and that is a nightmare um, because if you're a small company like ours, having to guarantee inventory for extended periods of time and price protection, all the things, it's tough to do as a small business. So some considerations and starting places for you is what software do you use right now? And that's the first thing I would ask you if we were doing a consult is, and is there anything that directly integrates and works with that? And is it any good? So like we said, Square. If you're using Square, there's a bunch of POS systems that I'm not familiar with, but I would start with them and say, like, what do they integrate with? Um, and then what do you already know how to do? Um, do you know how to write copy? Do you know how to do videos? Do you know how to create images? What kinds of things can you ship product? Are you really good at customer service? And then what are you going to have to hire out, or what might you have to spend time learning? So take those things into consideration when you're deciding. And then what kind of budget do you have for this? This includes your time or the time of your staff. What outcome are you hoping for? And I like everybody to set outcomes. So whether that's like, I want one sale by the end of the month or 10 sales, or I want to have 10 people on my email list, you need to have an outcome, because if you don't have an outcome, then how do you know if you're winning? um, like, okay, great, I have a web page now, what is it supposed to do? Whether that's like page impressions through Google, like I got 1,000 people to visit my site, hey, great. We like conversions, obviously. Sales are good to me, but not everybody has that as a goal. Like maybe for this event it would have been registrations, right? Like how many registrations did we get? So think in that term, like how many downloads did we get of this video? Think about what your outcome is, and that will help direct you on your starting place. And then start something. Decide on one page, or your top 3 products, or even your bottom 3 products, so you can start play a little. So when we started selling on Amazon, we started with a low cost, low weight item, so we could test theories, we could see all the costs up front and work out the kinks before we did a bunch. And then I definitely really recommend the crawl, walk, run kind of process. So you start really slow and small, and then you build it up a little more, and then you go to the run. Because if you try to do it all at once, it's very overwhelming and you can't do it well. So when you start really small, then you can work out all the bugs, you can learn, and then that way you're learning at a pace that you can handle. Um, Second, I would say build a list and communicate. Set a cadence that you can commit to and then do it. Whether it's quarterly, monthly, weekly, it really doesn't matter as long as you commit to it and you're doing it on a set frequency. And I'm sure you've all participated on a site or followed somebody on Facebook where they're really random and they like pop in and maybe they're really good for a month and then you don't see them for 6 months. You want to be more consistent because people pay attention to that and they are more engaged when you're consistent. And so whether that's, like I said, doesn't matter what the frequency is, just set it and commit. And then no one knows your customer better than you. So if they do, that would be your project number one. Learn about your customer. But more than likely, if you're doing a good job, you know your customer really well. That's going to guide you as to where to go. You'll know if your customer's on Facebook or they're on Instagram or they're on TikTok, or where are they, or they're like, our customers listen to radio. They are not. They're like, they're on Twitter, but they're not on Twitter for that. So Facebook, we've had some engagement, but they're very engaged in our email list. So we're very intentional about how we use that. They like videos off of YouTube, but they like to receive them through the email list or on the website. So we've learned a lot about our customer in that way, and we try to use that information so we're engaging with them the way they want to be engaged. And then advanced considerations for e-commerce are integrations and apps. Like, what advanced considerations do you need? Import and export functionality. And by import and export, I mean customer data, importing and exporting, product data, importing and exporting, like Google Feeds, those kinds of things, automation and business rules. And I typically say like bigger business, but honestly, I think it's as important for even small business because you have fewer resources as far as people power goes or manpower goes. So if you can automate something so you don't have to touch it every day because it can be done automatically, and you can create business rules that say if this, then that, then you're going to be light years ahead of your competition. And then scalability, because maybe you're not always going to be the size you are and you want to be able to scale. Now, whether your platform can scale well or whether it's going to be a lot of work, kind of take that into consideration of how hard would it be to scale or how hard would it be to switch to something that can. And then is the company you're looking at investing forward? Have they come out with new integrations anytime recently? Or are they like with the company that we were with for 17 years? Like it was really obvious at a certain point that they were no longer investing forward. And that was why we needed to start looking at alternatives. So I hope I've made a case for a web presence and some kind and given you food for thought on how you might start or improve your existing. And then just I wanted to leave you with that same thing of guess who doesn't connect with their audience, build an engaged following and sell the right product to the right people while making a massive impact. Those who are doing nothing out of fear of doing the wrong thing. So I encourage you to do something. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then we can have some Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I did have a couple questions, and I'm sure there's some other people. And if you want to join at this point, at the top of the screen, you can join your video or audio, and we can invite you into this so we can see your face when you're asking your questions. But I had a couple questions. Like, I think it's amazing how affordable the e-commerce sites are. I remember when I was on the Hops and Humboldt committee years ago, we had tons of merchandise after 1 year, and the cost of creating the e-commerce site to sell our merchandise was so crazy that there was no way we could do that. But now, in looking at those sites, it seems affordable. So that's exciting.
It is so affordable.
One of my questions about the ratings was if you're rated low on Facebook, does that feed into your Google ratings? Do you know?
It can. Yeah, it can. And nobody knows exactly Google's special algorithms, but they do also have manual, like there is some manual work that happens. It's not just all algorithmic. So it can, yes, when your ratings are negative, you can get dumped towards the back page because what they do is they have like I can't remember what the authority, I think is what they call it. But so the higher ratings that you have, the higher your authority or your value goes. And so those work in relationship to how you're ranked.
Nice. For those that are just popping in, if you want to jump into this chat, you're welcome to start. Jessica did a presentation and we'll be sending out that deck or getting it posted here so that way you guys can have that deck later. But now is your time to ask. We have about 12 minutes before the session is over and we'd love to have you ask some questions. Jessica did do a poll in the poll section. It looks like a handful of people have done that. And I don't know if you want to address the poll at all, Jessica, at this time.
Yeah, so it looks like we've got 81% of the people that responded that do have an email list. And then a couple people that have a mail list and some people that have none. Most people do not have an e-commerce store. So, and then some people have about 80% have some sort of web presence. So that's good. We've got some presence, but I definitely would like to see some people, depending on what your platform is, of course, if you can have an e-commerce store, I get like if you're a bank that having an e-commerce store maybe doesn't make sense, but obviously having online services does, right?
Yeah, and I'm looking at some of the people in the chat, which are people that are sitting in the session. A lot of us are economic developers or have membership lists that will be then passing this information on to then our clients and our business owners. Google Maps presence is super important. Yes. Oh, yeah, good.
Hi,
Eureka Chamber. Do you have a question?
Yes, just I follow Clean, and I'm a customer. You guys just rock it down there. You know, you're the quiet achievements of Humboldt County. And it's just so exciting to see how you used e-commerce to be able to grow your business worldwide. And I put in the chat a little earlier ago that the chamber, this is Dianna, uses the lead on our Elevate program, which is the e-commerce digital marketing training program.
Donna, I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to see if anybody else is hearing the echo. Yes, it's it would be best if you put your question in the chat because we're not able to understand you. I'm sorry, but thank you for being here. Oh, okay. Yes, can't hear. Sorry, Donna. If you don't mind putting that question in there, we'd love to answer it. Anybody else have anything? Feel free to jump on in here or ask your question.
I did see somebody that said that they were, let's see, what did they say here? That they had a lot of conversation, I think it was Monica, about sales platforms with artists.
Oh, cool.
And so, Monica, I was just curious, like what you steer them towards for their art, because I don't have much experience. I would think maybe Etsy, but I'm not sure if there's a particular platform that's specific to artists.
Here's Monica.
Hey, you know, I usually sort of shape the conversation around like what they want to do, because honestly, you know, I love Etsy for a lot of things. I've had my personal stuff on Etsy for ages, and it's probably maybe unfortunately the best place for art and for handmade things, but at the same time, it's been really kind of overrun with people selling supplies and, you know, various things. And like my own listings, even though, you know, there was a time when I was much better at like tracking my own, my listings and stuff, where they just kind of got buried. By, I mean, things, you know, when I search, like, okay, I'm going to search specifically for what I do. And like the first 3 pages are things that have nothing to do with like the search terms that I'm using, because there's, you know, sellers overseas that are selling, I don't know, supplies and various things that really don't have anything to do with it. And I think that, you know, Etsy, unfortunately, in an effort to grow, sort of lost the ability to be really good for smaller sellers. So, and I don't know what the answer is to that. So it's like I keep my store, but honestly, I sell most of what I do just by like posting on Facebook.
On Facebook,
yeah. Or, you know, Facebook and Instagram. I cross post, and you know, it's like I made this pair of earrings. You know, I do. Like, I don't know. I guess I mostly do like made to order stuff, personally speaking.
Right.
So it makes it easier for, it's like, you know, I have this one thing, but if you like this color of beads or this style of earrings, you can let me know what you want and I'll just make it for you, rather than like keeping an entire Etsy store where I'm having to pay listing fees and all of that stuff and never be found.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious too, like Instagram, I follow a few artists on there, and that would make sense to me where you would. And have you used the Facebook store at all?
I started getting set up with it, but then I don't know, I just kind of started going the same direction as, you know, just sort of stayed with the like going by made to order. You know, I have so many options for what I do that trying to set up a listing for, you know, different styles of earrings, for example, and all of the bead options, because I make my own beads. So, you know, all the bead options and stuff is really overwhelming.
Yeah. That would be a lot.
You know, I just haven't really figured out how to sort of streamline all of that. But then I'm on the side of trying to give other people, you know, direction or suggestions. So,
right.
Yeah, I was definitely absorbing what you were saying so that I can also pass that along to other artists and, you know, professional practices class at HSU when I talk to them every semester and all of that.
Very cool.
This has been really great, Jessica. Thank you so much for all of your insight.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, anybody else? Jessica, do you want to?
Donna, I see your question.
yes.
And so the number one digital marketing tool or tip or trick, gosh, number one, I think really, I really can't stress enough how much building an email list has value. I think if that was the only thing you were going to do, that would be the thing I would pick, because you can take that and do a lot with it, and it's independent of your platform. So if you decide to change platforms, you still have your email list and you have a way to let them know that you've changed, versus if you only do like Amazon or you only do Walmart or you only do e-commerce and you have no way to communicate with your customers. I also think it gives you an opportunity to engage. And I think that would probably be my second tip, is to engage with your customers, whether that's face-to-face at events, doing forums, or whatever your platform or your process is understanding your customers and how you can add some additional value, because I think that's where that relationship and that brand awareness and that like where they become committed to you.
There's a question about platforms. So what platforms do you use when you're collecting emails? And then how are you communicating back out your information?
Yes, so we use ListTrack, but I know a bunch of companies that use MailChimp. It works, integrates with BigCommerce and Shopify and all the different things. I would say that part probably isn't as important unless you have a lot of extra needs. So like we went with ListTrack because it would integrate with what we were doing at the time, and also because they had the shopping cart abandonment built in, or not built in, but as an add-on. And then we did a welcome series. They had some of the things that we were looking for, and they were again investing forward. I think that as long as they can do the things that you want to do and it's easy. So ListTrack was easy from a build standpoint. When I first started, we did everything in HTML. So it was like text editors with HTML, and everybody's email was like AOL and Hotmail and stuff. So, literally our list was like in different text files that you would have to send through this third-party program. So it's come a long way. I think if you pick any of those, you've got a lot of data. I would also say, what analytics do they have available for you to view? That definitely is important, because like on our ListTrack, it will tell you like what your conversions are, how many people read the emails. It'll give you a visual like heat map of like who clicked on what on the email. So I think those are really cool functions.
That's a good point. When I was the executive director at the Business Improvement District, I had all my emails in MailChimp, and I had a crazy amount of click-through rates. And the people that didn't click through, I would capture those, and then I would send them a personal email. So yeah. I didn't let it go. Like I was going to keep going with it.
Yeah, so. And you can do like abandoned campaigns and all those different things. Yep, so looking for those kind of things when you're evaluating. But I come back to like starting somewhere is better than doing nothing.
Yeah, and Marianne had a question about CRM platforms. What CRM platforms do you use?
So we use Bright Pearl, which is not really a CRM, but it's kind of everything. So we needed something that would integrate for our warehouse, and then also allow us to do, we have a call center so people can call in and place orders. So we needed something that would allow for that, but that would also process payments. And a lot of CRMs don't process payments as part of it. So we spent about 2 years trying to find something that would work with all the different things that we needed it to work with, including Amazon. So that was the one we ended up with. But there are a lot out there depending, on your needs. If you just need customer contact, I know Zendesk, and I know some people use Salesforce. They use HubSpot. There's a lot of different ones out there now, compared to when I first started, that can integrate because they're just an app, so you can use that piece of the component. We just wanted something that was more integrated and more comprehensive, so that we weren't having to learn so many different platforms, especially when you think like you're on the phone with a customer trying to take an order. If you have to switch platforms to make notes or see notes, it can make things a little challenging and not as good a customer experience as we were hoping to have. So
Jessica, I do have one more question related to that. How much staff do you allot for your e-commerce site and management? I know it's kind of what you do all day, every day, but
yeah. So actually, with our new site, we have really 2 people that kind of do it part-time that have other jobs here. So, and they also do the email marketing.
Nice.
And then I'm involved at we're involved like at the copy level. Bob and I do most of the copywriting, but a lot of that comes from our catalog most of it though, yeah, it's just those 2 people, and they're not full-time dedicated to the web. So.
All right. Well, I just want to remind everybody, thank you, everybody. And if you have any more questions, Jessica's contact information is in her profile. It's also in your book, your bag that you received as part of the summit package. And there's a booklet in there. There's the catalog, the new catalog for 2022. I'm going to just drop my husband's name. My husband was the graphic designer that did the cover. So that was exciting for us. Mary Ann is a graphic designer, so I'll give her a shout out. We love graphic designers. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here today. If you have questions related to e-commerce, please don't hesitate to reach out to Jessica. She's very responsive, and she has a great crew of staff with her, as well as follow up with your local North Coast SBDC for upcoming workshops. I know that Layla Roberts has already mentioned she's going to try to reach out to Jessica to possibly teach some workshops, or at least some workshops through SBDC eventually. So, and then Eureka Chamber has their own incentives. Oh, and then I guess I did miss a question, is how do we feel about incentives for building up our mailing list?
Oh yeah, so we do use those. We do we test different offers, so I think that's important, is to test your offers.
Today's offer was 7% off.
Yep.
Yep. Yes, use the
test
offers.
different offers, but we found it very useful. And it's funny because my boss, the founder, Bob, he was very resistant until he saw how many additional ads we got onto our list. Because once you know what your conversion rates are, it's really easy to make a case for it. Yeah. So like every person we add means you get, $300 in sales, then it's not hard to figure out. So
yeah. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Oh, thank you for putting that back in there, Jessica. And I hope you guys all have a great day. Thank you for being a part of the summit this year, and we look forward to next year.
And Donna mentioned that there's the Chamber's Elevate program, free to all Humboldt businesses. So
perfect.
Good deal. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys hopping in.
Yeah.